The captain has fallen. Of all our company, I count but 37 living. On the third night of fighting, the Orks took the great bastion from us. Despair settled on our hearts, for all hope of rescue was now gone. Then they came, a host of space marines, though not of any chapter under the Emperor's sun. An eerie glow shrouded them, and fire seemed to dance about their feet. Like the bones of men in the torment of purgatory they were, so they looked more like skeletons than living men. They appeared amongst the Orks' battle line, and suddenly the air was full of battle din, of Orks wailing and crying out in terror. Never before or since have I seen fighting as I witnessed that dawn. And after, of the Dark Brotherhood, there was no sign.
Hello and welcome to Minisodes. He's battled my Tyranids in the subterranean depths of Macragge, marshalled his Black Legion in an assault against my Blood Angels on planet Macken, and this summer, Matthew is back with his Ultramarines to do battle against this amazing Ork army painted by Minisodes patron and absolute legend, Buried Under Lead. We're playing a 2,000-point game of 2nd edition 40k. This is a narrative battle inspired by Chief Librarian Tigurius' testimony in Codex Ultramarines. Speaking of patrons, a big thank you and welcome to this month's Patreon subscribers. Adventures in Miniature Painting, the Iron Snake 89, Necromantic Party Pooper, John Smith, Blast, Shabby Knight, Boombastico, Prophet of the 8th Legion, Elok of the East, Odin Eggen, Daniel McLean, and William R. Let's take a look at our forces. My army commander is none other than pirate overfiend Urgok Manhammer, a war boss in heavy armor, armed with a custom shooter. He brings all the killiest kit, including this track-mounted shock attack gun, attended by a mechaniac and hangers-on, and a runtherd who oversees the ammunition, snotlings. The mystic Ork Weird Boy, known behind his back as Rizwind, attended by 2 minders, equipped with a Weird Boy staff. The final character is the Pain Boy with his Doc's tools, and he has just finished wiring up this dreadnought armed with a las cannon, heavy bolter, and 2 power claws, which looms over a veritable tide of Orkdom. Da management! 3 mega-armored Bad Moons armed with power fists and plasma guns, 10 Bad Moons tooled up and armed with a heavy plasma gun and 2 plasma guns, followed up by a smaller unit of 5 Bad Moons with 2 heavy plasma guns. The Blood Axe contingent is made up of 5 boys armed with bolters, a heavy plasma gun, and a knob wielding a power axe. Now for some special forces. 6 Blood Axe commandos, all with power axes, ready to launch a daring raid to finish off the blue beakies. Endlessly tinkering, 8 Death Skulls armed with 7 combi weapons, prepared to bury the last of the Ultramarines in a barrage of Orky munitions. Ork aristocracy makes another appearance in the list in the form of 4 knobs, clad in heavy armor and armed with plasma guns and power fists. Singing Orky shanties, a 10-strong mob of freebooters armed with bolters make ready, supported by another 5, including 1 toting a missile launcher. And finally, the Evil Sons, 3 Ork warbikes armed with twin-linked autocannons. If you want to see more of Buried Under Lead's work, check out the link in the video description. Commissions are now open. Let's take a look at Matthew's forces.
This was a last stand of brave battle brothers, led by Chief Librarian Tigurius, who would later be aided by spectral warriors of the Legion of the Damned. Therefore, Ed had already chosen a section of my force for me. 20 damned legionaries, who make up 2 identical squads. Each squad is composed of a sergeant with chainsword, a legionary wielding a flamer, and another with a heavy bolter, with the remainder carrying bolt guns. My force commander is Chief Librarian Tigurius, a potent level 4 psyker. he comes with the Hood of Hellfire and the Rod of Tigurius. But he could also take 2 other war gear cards, which were a Conversion Field and Chameleoline, to make him harder to hit when stationary. Supporting Tigurius is a Tech Marine armed with a bolt gun. The Tech Marine allows me to take a twin-linked heavy bolter Tarantula manned by a Servitor. I expected to face a mighty throng of greenskins, and this was part of my answer to thin their ranks. Holding the line is a Devastator squad with 2 heavy bolters and 2 missile launchers. The squad is led by a veteran sergeant whose bolt gun was fitted with an auxiliary grenade launcher loaded with frag grenades. For support, I chose a Dreadnought armed with an assault cannon and power fist with storm bolter. And finally, a Predator with an auto cannon turret and las cannon sponsons.
Driven from the Great Bastion, the shattered Ultramarines have chosen to make their stand in the vicinity of a ruined chapel. As this was a narrative scenario, we decided that Matthew's Ultramarines should take Dawn Raid, and the Orks would have the Take and Hold mission. Having the lower strategy rating, I deployed first, setting up the shock attack gun and retinue on this ruin, with a commanding view of the Ork objective in the center. The runt herd offered encouragement to the snotlings, who formed a disorderly queue behind the shock attack gun. The 10 Bad Moons got on the ready line, eager to rush the objective and finish the last of the Ultramarines in a deluge of plasma. The second Bad Moon mob hunkered down with their thrumming sun guns on a rocky hillock, awaiting the coming dawn. The Blood Axe mob found a spot that matched their camo and dug in amongst some craters. Tactics, innit? The mob of 5 freebooters with the missile launcher prepared to get into a good position in my first turn, whilst the 10 Ork pirates with bolters waited in open ground, ready to rush forwards into the large crater. The Orky aristocrats, in heavy armor, waited contemptuously behind the Bad Moon position, in front of the real upper crust, 3 mega-armored knobs, and Urgok Manhammer himself. On my left flank, the Dreadnought clanked up to the battle line, whilst in a plume of acrid smoke, the 3 warbikes appeared on the Ork right flank. The mystic Ork weird boy, known behind his back as Rizwind, was carried up by his minders. Playing the ambush strategy card, the Death Skulls had already seized the center ground and stood gazing hungrily through the iron sights of their dreadful weaponry. Urgok's army, having already given the Ultramarines a good pasting back at the Bastion, awaited the Warboss's command to surge forward, finish the last of the Beakies, and claim this world in the name of Urgok Manhammer. Matthew deployed the first of his Devastator combat squads in the ruins on his left flank. Above them, the Servitor and Tarantula prepared to punish any Orks that strayed into their firing arc. The Predator, battered but still in working order, brought up the center, alongside the ancient Dreadnought, its assault cannon still packing enough ammunition to wreak a terrible toll on the Orks. The Tech Marine looked solemnly at his 2 charges, determined to keep them operational until the bitter end. Anchoring the Ultramarines' right flank, Matthew deployed his second Devastator combat squad, alongside Chief Librarian Tigurius. Since the company chaplain was slain, he led the company in their prayers. And so, the Ultramarines made their peace with the Emperor, in battle fashion, and awaited the end. Goodbye, boring tournament boards. Hello, Dr. Spork's Retro Terrain. Hold the line from Tyranid hordes using the Imperial defense line, or fight your way through the perilous streets of Ork Town. Dr. Spork's extensive range includes STL files across fantasy and sci-fi settings, including deodorant tanks, elven towers, bunkers, and a dwarven fortress. So, what are you waiting for? Get yourself a shot of Dr. Spork's marvelous retro terrain now! No supports needed. FDM printer sold separately. Before the battle began, Ork commandos on a secret mission infiltrated out of an abandoned bunker. Matthew used covering fire to put his Tarantula Heavy Bolter on overwatch. And with a decidedly firm White Dwarf handshake, we were off. And so were the commandos, who charged out of their hiding place, 3 of them barreling into the unsuspecting Tigurius, their power axes ready for chopping. Some whimsical member of the Blood Axes blew a whistle, and the advance was on. The Bad Moons ran forwards to join up with the Death Skulls in the center, whilst the Dreadnought lumbered forwards, sploshing its way into the scummy pond. The heavy-armored Knobs moved up, kicking backsides and bellowing incoherent instructions to anyone that would listen. Urgok and his bodyguard strode imperiously forward, eager for the scrap that would surely come. On my right flank, the 10 freebooters legged it, fanning out into the cover of the crater and sci-fi cacti. The freebooters with the missile launcher hopped up onto the ruin and squinted into the distance, trying to spot a good target. Wreathed was convinced to go towards the enemy, the war energy of his excited colleagues giving him the mother of all headaches. Slightly out of sequence, but we're all friends here, Matthew triggered Overwatch. The tarantula poured heavy bolter rounds into the freebooters, mulching 3 in the open and exploding the head of one in the crater. The freebooters did not fancy any more of that, and broke, scarpering in behind the safety of the cactus. The warbikes had other ideas and roared down the Ultramarine flank. The mech pointed his shock attack gun at a Devastator and opened a warp tunnel in his direction. The mech's quantum calculations were off, and 2 stands of snotlings tumbled harmlessly off into space and time. The Dreadnought made to blast the Devastators with its heavy bolter, but disaster! Matthew played the malfunction strategy card, destroying the weapon, causing a secondary explosion, immobilizing and setting fire to the Dreadnought's engine. The Blood Axe with the heavy plasma gun fired his weapon in the direction of the muzzle flash of the tarantula, but the molten ball of energy went wide. The Bad Moons had a go too, firing coruscating miniature suns at the Devastator on Matthew's left flank, turning one Devastator into superheated steam. But catastrophe struck once more as the second heavy plasma misfired, cooking off in the midst of the Orks. Their management and Urdok narrowly escaped the blast, but 3 of the gunner's mates weren't so lucky. Inexplicably, the Ork that experienced the mishap was unharmed, but his weapon was cooked. Having killed far more of my own troops in the shooting phase than that of the enemy, it was time for close combat. It emerged that Tigurius might not have been quite so unprepared for the Orky ambush after all, and deftly dispatched 2 commandos and the Knob. I underestimated him. Warp time. Matthew dealt the psychic cards. Wreathed drew upon the power of the War and attempted to summon Gork's foot upon the Ultramarines, but Matthew nullified the power. Tigurius responded with the Hood of Hellfire, but could not project the power far enough to do the Orks any more harm. Urdok Manhammer took stock. The Commando Gambit had failed, the Dreadnought was busted and on fire, the shock attack gun had missed, one of the Moon's sun guns had exploded and nearly killed him, and a mob of freebooters was already ready to book it. Yep, everything was proceeding just as planned. Tigurius and 2 bolter-armed members of the Devastator squad rounded on the remaining commandos. The Dreadnought strode impetuously forwards, cycling its assault cannon, whilst the Tech Marine, pushing his pocket calculator to the limit, followed his venerable friend. The Predator rolled out alongside the Devastators, who redeployed amongst the ruins. Out of nowhere, the Legion of the Damned appeared, striking deep amongst the Ork battle line. The first scattered into the right-hand corner of my deployment zone, behind the freebooters with the missile launcher, and Wreathed. Another squad materialized between the Bad Moons and the burning Ork Dreadnought. The third appeared beside the Devastators on Matthew's left flank. Their ways are mysterious and inscrutable, just like a scatter dice. And the final squad trained their weapons upon the bewildered Blood Axes in the craters. But not before a Death Skull overwatched one of the Legionnaires. The mysterious Marine was blown to pieces in a shower of bone and ceramite, but of his corpse there was nary a sign. To make matters worse, Matthew flashed this card: Bombing Run. We decided that this was actually a spectral blast that would suck out the very souls of the enemies of man, or something like that. Matthew tinkered about with the Thud gun template for a bit, then caused horrendous destruction as the life essence was drained from 5 Death Skulls and a Bad Moon by a howling gale of the Emperor's wrath. The 3 surviving Death Skulls wailed in terror and cowered on the ruined stairway of the chapel. Lucky for them, as the Dreadnought's assault cannon sent a stream of munitions into the massive Bad Moon bodies, pulping 3 lads, including one with a heavy plasma gun. Then another unfortunate with a contemptuous blast of the wrist-mounted storm bolter. The Marines and Tigurius gunned down the commandos at point-blank range with their bolt pistols, as the rest of the squad put 2 crack missiles into the beleaguered Dreadnought, but failed to finish the ailing machine off. The Servitor cleared the Tarantula's jam, pocketing the faulty round for future analysis. Thanks to the freebooters' cowardice, Rizwind and his minders were now firmly in the sights of the Predator. Gork help us. He did, and incredibly the autocannon missed, but one of the minders was lanced in twain by a las cannon beam. The Devastator's heavy bolter opened up. The rocks were no protection for the 2 remaining Bad Moons, and they were blown asunder in a shower of rock shards and green meat. The Legionnaires, like an avenging blade, scythed down yet more Bad Moons, turning the centre into a bloodbath for the Orks. Whilst behind the Ork lines, more bedlam ensued, as the Legionnaires set upon the freebooters in the ruins and killed another of Rizwind's minders. Meanwhile, the other Legion of the Damned squad unleashed Promethean and bolter fire into the Blood Axes, setting one ablaze before blasting the burning Ork and another of his comrades. The shooting phase was mercifully over. The psychic phase was uneventful, a brutal turn. Had the Ultramarines' prayers for deliverance been answered? Or would this timely intervention simply prolong the inevitable? Urgok was angry, and seeing the strange burny bony Umis, he charged towards them with the mega-armoured knobs, passing the fear roll in the process. The heavy-armoured knobs in the centre also charged their assailants, crunching over the mangled remains of the Bad Moon mob that lay scattered about the ruins. The surviving Bad Moons, who just about were holding their nerve, took shelter alongside the Pain Boy. The Death Skulls remained in the chapel, desperately trying to pull themselves together as they came to terms with the awful destruction that had been wrought amongst their ranks. Rizwind, finding himself alone and unsupervised, made for the nearest board edge, but would have to get past the Legionnaires first. The freebooters with the missile launcher turned around to deal with the ghastly Space Marines in their rear. Slowing to combat speed, the Evil Sons swung their bikes around the bunker on the Ultramarines' left flank, ready to unload their autocannons into the Marines. The mech whooped with excitement as a proper good target came into view, a Umi Dreddy, and ushered 2 lots of Snotlings into the shock attack gun's warp tunnel. But again, the shot went wide of the mark, and 8 Snotlings suddenly found themselves fused into the masonry of a nearby ruin. The Ork Dread was down, but not out, and cored a Marine with the missile launcher in the open with a well-placed beam of las cannon fire. The freebooters blasted at the Legionnaires. A crack missile thudded harmlessly into the ground, but one of the warriors was brought down. The Blood Axes also fired, but their shots failed to wound any of the Marines. At this point, I realised that I hadn't rolled a fear check for the knobs in the centre, which they duly failed, so I returned them to their original position and elected to fire their plasma guns into the Legionnaires instead. Now, if you think my luck up until this point had been subpar, this really took the biscuit. 3 out of 4 shots missed, and the one that hit jammed. The Emperor was watching out for Matthew's Marines. I still had one Bad Moon with a plasma gun who was itching for payback after seeing all his mates get scragged, but he missed 2. Oh dear. Those plasma guns would have to recharge for a turn. Would there be any Orks left to fire them? Meanwhile, on the Ultra's left flank, the Evil Sons opened up with their twin-linked autocannons. 2 of the bikes annihilated the Legion of the Damned squad that had materialized alongside the Ultramarines, sending the ghostly apparitions back from whence they came, whilst the 3rd biker unleashed a murderous fusillade into the Tarantula battery, smashing the sentry gun and its servitor apart with heavy caliber rounds. Urgok and his nobs crumped 2 of the Legionnaires, but were perplexed when their opponents disappeared into thin air. No trophies then. In the psychic phase, Wreathed got Da Crunch off, using ultimate force, and the Foot of Gork crunched 2 of the Space Marines into the dirt. The Devastator squad, saved by the sacrificial intervention of the Legion of the Damned, moved deeper into the ruin, whilst the Predator rumbled forward, swiveling its formidable guns to face the evil Sun's bikers. Bellowing in righteous indignation, the Dreadnought stomped onwards, its assault cannon hungry to rip and tear more Orks. Tigerius and the Devastators joined the attack and leapt over the barricades. Forwards, for the Emperor! The Predator's gunnery was on point. Autocannon shots blasted the lead biker from his mount and flipped the bike over in a spectacular fireball. The second biker was also slain, leaving nothing except his gauntleted hands gripping the handlebars as the bike careened out of control. The second lascannon sponson attempted to snipe the desperate Wreathed, but the weird boy was saved by the cover of the crater. The Dreadnought's targeting computer locked onto 3 of the nobs in heavy armor. The assault cannon hit, just, and Matthew's proficiency at rolling sustained fire dice remained consistent. The heavy armor proved no protection, and 3 of the cream of Ork society were torn apart in green mist and spinning plate. The firestorm also caught another bad moon and killed the Pain Boy. The Legion of the Damned caught the surviving Orks in a crossfire, their heavy bolter annihilating the last bad moon, and their rapid-firing bolters killed the last 2 nobs. The last Marine fired at the Death Skulls, but failed to wound. The Legionnaire not in combat with Urgok and his nobs fired at the Blood Axes, sending one tumbling into a crater. The last squad of Legion of the Damned directed all of their fire into Wreathed, putting the unfortunate weird boy out of his misery. Permanently. In the close combat phase, 2 angry nobs smashed another Legionnaire apart and frowned as the corpse disappeared into the ether. In the psychic phase, Tigerius projected his hood of hellfire, turning one of the Death Skulls into ash. The Ultramarines had the upper hand, but could they hope to complete the Dawn Raid objective? My Dreadnought's engine fire finally gave out the ghost, literally, and exploded, taking one of the Legion of the Damned with it, straight to the fires of purgatory. The war bike span out, exploding against the side of the bunker, catching the last bike in the blast and sending it out of control, bouncing harmlessly against the side of the ferrocrete structure. The Death Skulls turned to face the Legion of the Damned, and Urgok and the management, remembering their objective, headed off to challenge the Ultramarines for control of the center. The 2 surviving Blood Axes saw off the last Legionnaire in the squad. The Death Skull's custom weapons killed another Legionnaire, and Urgok's custom shooter did 4 Strength 8 hits on the Legion of the Damned squad in the center, showing the remnant of his forces how it's done and banishing the spectral Space Marines back from whence they came. The freebooters missed with their missile once again, but their comrades behind the cactus found their bottle and were back in the fight. Luckily for the Orks, the psychic phase was underwhelming, producing too few warp cards for Matthew to deploy Tigerius' powers in this turn. Matthew moved his last 3 Legionnaires into cover, hoping to keep them alive long enough to hold on to Dawn Raid. The Dreadnought marched onwards, daring the Orks to continue their efforts to take and hold the center of the board, followed by the Tech Marine. Sensing that the warboss was nearby, Tigerius made haste to find the hated Ork Overfiend. Gunning the engines, the Predator's driver sent the tank zooming forwards, intent on slaying the only real Ork threat left, the Mega Nobs. The Dreadnought asserted its authority in the only way it knew how, and redecorated the inside of the wall of the chapel with a thick coat of green. A Devastator fired at the Mega Nobs and landed a hit and 2 wounds, but their powered armor and Medi-Squig absorbed all the damage. A sponson lascannon on the Predator lanced one of the freebooters in the ruin. Then the Predator's turret opened up. Matthew needed a 4 to hit the Meganobs in heavy cover, then rolled a 3 on the sustained fire dice and dealt 3 wounds. I then proceeded to fail every armor save and Medi-Squig roll in quick succession. My precious knobs were dead. 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 In the psychic phase, Matthew played Displacement, transporting the Devastators onto the Orks' taken hold objective, creating a bulwark of might between Urgok and his objective. Spying the Warboss, Tigerius unleashed his Hood of Hellfire, singeing him badly, scoring a wound. In my final turn, the Blood Axes repositioned in an attempt to stop the Legion of the Damned from scoring Dawn Raid. Urgok Manhammer, smarting from his burns and even more grievous wounds to his pride, moved towards the Devastators, readying his custom shooter. The Freebooters fell back, hoping to find and destroy the last of the Legion of the Damned. The Blood Axe's weapons drill paid off, and they succeeded in plugging one of the Legionnaires, removing the prospect of Dawn Raid, for now. The Freebooter with the missile launcher sent a crack missile spinning towards the Predator, but missed. Urgok shot his custom shooter at the Devastators, killing one of the Ultramarines. In the psychic phase, Tigerius projected every ounce of his hatred into the Hood of Hellfire, resulting in a murderous inferno that enveloped the bellowing Ork warboss. In a few moments, Urgok Manhammer was reduced to a pair of smouldering boots. In Matthew's final turn, he sent the Predator around the crater and into the Ork deployment zone. Dawn Raid was his. The Legionnaires moved towards the Freebooters, and Tigerius strode onwards. The Predator finished off the last of the Blood Axes, who gawped in admiration at the Yumi tank before being blown apart. The 2 Legionnaires sent mass reactive bolts into the Freebooter with the missile launcher. Finally, the Tech Marine took a shot at the mech, and a well-placed headshot brought the Mechaniac's endless tinkering to an end. And with that, the battle was over. The Ultramarines secured their objective and tended to their wounded. Of their mysterious saviors, there was no sign. That was a brilliant game and a real showcase of 2nd Edition's ability to craft a compelling story on the tabletop. Matthew played an absolute blinder here, and his use of strategy cards, playing Malfunction on the Dreadnought and Bombing Run on my confluence of boys in the centre, definitely played a pretty critical role in putting the Orks on the back foot. I have heard a lot about the shock attack gun, but I didn't get to see its potency played out in this game. That said, the Ork warbikes were really fearsome, and I look forward to fielding my own in the future. A quick note about the Legion of the Damned: they can deep strike normally, but only if they're in a purely Legion of the Damned force. In an allied list like this, the Ultramarines would only be allowed 1 squad that would deploy normally. What occurred here was a pretty asymmetric game that played out just like in Tigerius' testimony, and this pleased both of us immensely. A huge thank you to Buried Under Lead for the loan of his marvellous Ork army, and a massive thank you to my Patreon community who make all of this possible. I will be putting a podcast on the Patreon very soon. In it, Matthew and I talk about our weekend of 2nd Edition gaming, including the game he filmed for his channel, Miniscape. So it would be awesome if you could check that out. Oh, and we'd love to hear any ideas you have for what game we should play in 2026. Have a think. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end, and happy hobbying.